Andrew's aim when putting the program together was to get an example of two coaches who'd collaborated brilliantly. And the example he chose was Steve Kearney and Wayne Bennett, who had collaborated brilliantly to allow the Kiwis to win the Rugby League World Cup against every expectation. Unfortunately, Wayne hasn't been able to join us, but he said he would like to be with us anyway. So I was invited to go into the Broncos headquarters in Brisbane and to interview Wayne and Steve. So we're going to begin with that video, and then Steve is going to be welcomed, as all of us have been welcomed, onto the stage, and Steve will continue to talk about collaboration. So we're going to begin, lower the lights, and we're going to begin with a video of two collaborating coaches.
Process. I think that's really important. Also, I think it's, for me, in terms of the coaching, from the experience that I have had, it's about surrounding yourself with good people. I think Wayne will certainly agree, is that it can be a lonely place coaching. If you've got good people around you, I think it's certainly very, very beneficial in your coaching career.
Yeah, unless you're unemployed, don't do it for a start. It's got many pitfalls, and longevity is it's not part of that deal, unfortunately, for most people. So, but it's like all things in life. If you're going to do it, then be committed to it, and make sure you've got a focus about what you want for the team, how you want them to look, how you want them to play their football, and the type of culture that you want in the team.
How do you develop that focus and that sense of the culture you want, Wayne?
Oh, it's what you drive. You drive it, you live it every day, and as people either buy into it or won't buy into it, you're making decisions about replacing them or keeping them.
Where does collaboration fit into coaching for the both of you? How important is collaboration?
Well, it's everything.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't got relationships, you can't. You keep tearing the relationships down, you won't be long before you're out of a coaching job. So
right.
It's number one priority.
For you?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think the relationships, as I said earlier, surrounding yourself with good people that you trust, and you've got to be able to collaborate with them and make sure that the communication between yourself and them, and it's really important. I think your collaboration with with the players, I think that's a very important part of the process also.
And what are the keys to collaboration with players for you?
I think honesty is the first thing. What I do try to do is try and establish a senior playing group. A lot of the time, they represent the whole group as such, and I think if you're dealing with them directly and honestly, I think that's a really good start.
How about you, Wayne, for collaboration between coaches and players?
Yeah, well, just that relationship thing again. I can't coach without building relationships. So after that, if anybody listening to this interview doesn't get what relationships are about, then coaching is going to be pretty difficult for them as well.
How do you go about building relationships with players?
Making yourself available, show them you care about them. That's the key things. And after that, as I said, the rest is not rocket science stuff. It's pretty basic.
Yep.
It's where we get lost with it all is because of our personalities and because we suffer with things like envy and jealousy and small-mindedness and pettiness and all those issues that we all face. But the bottom line is, the things that continually fail in the relationship because it's you start to make things personal don't try to build it and don't think it's important.
How do you handle collaboration between coaches?
Same way. Look, coaches and players are no different.
Right.
You know, it's all in your team, so you have to care for them. You know, they have to trust you, and you have to have a common bond that, you know, they want the same that you want. What you're driving, they've bought into. And if that's not the case, if you're the head coach, then you know you're going to have a lot of disquiet and a lot of uneasy moments in the season, which will all be internal stuff. Have nothing to do with the opposition. So you'll beat yourself before the season even starts.
What do you feel about collaboration between coaches?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the role as an assistant coach for a few years, and I think it's really important in terms of the success of the group. The way the whole group operates, players and coaches, in the football side of things. I think the relationship between the head coach and his assistants, all the staff. I think it's really important, and again, it's about having that open-mindedness. Being honest about your feedback to the head coach, so I think that's really important.
And just on that, no difference between the players and the coaches. I mean, we've all got different jobs and different roles. That's understood. And we all have different responsibilities, and we all have to keep different accounts of trust and that. But at the end of the day, we're all part of the team. I just happen to be the head coach. Steve happens to be the assistant coach. You happen to be the player.
Right.
So there's no different rule for me as there is for Steve or as there is for you. We're all part of a team, and we've got a job to do. And our jobs are different, but we've got a job to do.
How about collaboration between players? Does that happen naturally, or have you got to grow that as a coach, or how do you set up good collaborative structures between players?
Oh well, it depends on the player. A lot of times, if he's a good communicator and himself and someone that's confident in himself, he'll be pretty easy to get along with. But it's the one that's lacking a bit of confidence in himself, or the one may have a lot of confidence in himself, but he's a poor communicator.
Right.
So yeah, of course you've got to make an effort, a conscious effort to break that barrier down, so you can understand him better, and he can understand what you're trying to drive with the team, so he can be a part of that.
How do you keep that simple, Wayne? How do you let that not get too complicated and sound like psychology or whatever?
Well,
how do you keep it simple?
Well, President Truman said, he said that God must have loved the common man and woman because he made so many of us. So if you remember that every time you're dealing with somebody, you don't have a problem about keeping it simple.
Yeah.
And simple works. Complex doesn't work.
So how do you find it as a less experienced coach collaborating with a much more experienced coach in Wayne? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I think it's for myself. I think it's I think it's the ideal situation to find myself in the sense that working with someone like Wayne who has had a great deal of experience, and it's a great learning opportunity for myself, and that's that's certainly the way that I look at it. I have a fairly clear idea on what I think works from my point of view, and but still obviously understand that Wayne his experience is invaluable, and using that to only strengthen what I think works from my perspective. So I think for myself, I think it's an ideal situation to be in.
What about for you, Wayne, working with a younger coach? What's the benefit for you?
Yeah, well, Steve was a great player in his time, and he's been a wonderful coach, and he's been to a couple of good clubs, and so he brings a lot. So I just try to tap into what he brings, allow him to be the guy that he wants to be. We don't have a lot of disputes. We have a lot of discussions. And we communicate really well with each other. So at the end of the day, he knows the buck stops with me, and if I've got to make that decision, I'll make that decision. But 9 times out of 10, he's going to get what he wants, the way he wants to do it, because we're not poles apart with our philosophies. We're not poles apart with our discipline. We're not poles apart about what we want for the club here.
Right.
And that's really important in the guys you employ. You don't want them at the other end of the spectrum. I mean, I want to be challenged, and I want them to challenge me a bit on some of the, but I don't want to be fighting with them every day about a philosophy about the game that I've been involved with for all my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, the guys, and the good thing with Steve and Kevin's the same. they're really respectful, and they they know what I bring, and but I allow them to be there to be themselves as well, because I want them to impact on the players, what the wonderful qualities that they have.
How's that feel for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a, as I said, it's been a, blessing, or a wonderful relationship to have with Wayne, and I know even if I take myself back to 2008 when I first sort of come in contact with Wayne on a working relationship in the World Cup. I was a young guy who's brought in to take over the coaching with the New Zealand Kiwis at the time, and getting the opportunity to work with Wayne at that particular time. I was only 2 years into coaching, and to have someone Wayne's experience was wonderful in the sense that I guess I had an energy and Wayne had the experience, and in terms of collaborating, I thought we used the relationship well to get an ultimate result for the Kiwi team at the end of 2008 with with the World Cup win. So even now I feel from a coaching perspective there's always an opportunity to learn and to grow, and that's no different now to what it was back in 2008. So I feel I'm in a real good position in that sense.
Wayne, what attracted you to do that in 2008, to work with the Kiwis?
Well, the World Cup was being, after about 8 or 10 years of no World Cup, all of a sudden they reactivated it again. And the Australian press were pretty ruthless about it. I reckon it was going to be a failure, and it was going to be this, and Australia would do all these things to everybody else in the competition. But I was, I'd worked with a lot of Kiwis over a long period of time. I had a great deal of respect for them, and then in 2007 they gave me the opportunity to coach the All Girls when they went to England for that one-off game, and I was really impressed with their attitude and that, and I just thought they needed a bit of belief and a bit of confidence, and they could really do something pretty special.
Mm-hmm.
So 2008 rolled around, they came and approached me to do the job, to be the head coach, but I didn't want to be the head coach in New Zealand. I thought, I'd admired Steve, as I said, for a long time about what he'd done in the game and that, and I knew how proud he was about being a New Zealander, and I thought, well, he's ready to take this, so they were at my house on the day, and we rang him and, put it to him, and he said, well, I want to be the coach, I don't want to be the puppet coach. I said, you won't be the puppet coach. I said, I'm happy to stay in the background, and I did stay in the background. I just, my priority was the coach, and he handled everything else, and really good, and yeah, we had a great success. It was a wonderful time. It was wonderful. Great group of guys to work with, and they got a bit of belief when it mattered most. And at the end of it all, the Australian press and were applauding what a magnificent World Cup it was, and it was a wonderful game of football, the final. And Australia was supposed to be unbeatable. Well, they weren't unbeatable, and it was a great occasion. And still, one of my fondest memories of my career is that night and at Suncorp and the way the boys played.
Steve, in your experience, how do players learn best?
Yeah, I think it's certainly when they've been given a clear instruction. I think that's really important, and it's important that you drive that from a coach's point of view, and when what I've found is when there is grey area, that's when they then they do sort of go off track, or they're not clear about the instruction or the process, then that's when you do find yourself in a bit of trouble. But certainly when it's it's been outlined to them very clearly what their role and what their job is, and you're driving that from the top, head coach through all your staff, I think that certainly helps them learn, and also given that open environment where they're able to help grow themselves too. I think that's really really important. It's not all driven from the coaches or from the head coach where they're putting everything in front of them, and it's this way or the highway. I think it's important to have an open relationship there where they get an opportunity to to grow themselves also.
How much emphasis do you put on personal responsibility?
I think it's all about personal responsibility, being accountable, for your actions. I think that's really important in a player's career. I think it's important in the coach's career. Taking ownership of what you're about.
Wayne, how about you? How do you think players learn best, and what do you think?
Well, I agree with all Steve said.
Okay.
Well, he summed it up pretty well.
Okay.
I'm trying to put people to sleep here today. We're trying to keep them awake.
How can players best help each other?
Oh, well, that's, look, peers are not going to help each other. That's a waste of time, okay? So, but older players, guys that have been there and done it more, will have the greatest influence on your team, okay? And that's the way it should be, but equal peers never works. And that's one of the problems we got with our under-20 comp. But all of a sudden, you got a 20-year-old and a 30-year-old. Well, the 20-year-old's going to listen to a 30-year-old. And the Broncos have been blessed with that type of situation here for a long period of time, because it was something that we created back at the beginning. And our young players have been very much influenced by our older players. And there's no better example this year than what Corey Parker did, Justin Hodges, Sam Thaiday and Adam Blair, and the responsibility they took with the team for a lot of stuff that kind of happened. Were we in the background driving it? Yes, we were, but they then took the responsibility, took it to the next level, and they got the young guys to buy into a whole lot of stuff, and it made a huge difference. Yeah, but they've got to look. The people that are driving it have got to be committed guys as well. They can't be false, and they can't be, and you can't put someone in that position if they don't have all the qualities, And those four guys have got all the qualities.
How do you know that, Wayne, in advance? Like, how do you test people out to check that?
Well, it's pretty obvious. You're with them every day of the week.
Uh-huh.
Someone talks a whole lot of rubbish. Well, no one's going to listen to him.
Mm-hmm.
Someone talks about how good he's going to play, but he never plays like that. Well, no one's going to follow him. So
Right.
It's not rocket science stuff, as I keep saying. It's just working around and being around him. That the boys respect him for what he does, how he trains, how he lives his life.
No, I think a lot of the players that Wayne's spoken about there. I mean, you don't get to play, for your country and state of origin footy. If you are, you do have a falseness about you. I think those two environments, Test match footy and state of origin footy. It's pretty hard to hide in that sense. And those players that Wayne's spoken about, they've played over 200, and most of them 250 NRL games. So they've got proven, runs on the board.
What are the main things to watch out for that can get in the road of collaboration? What can kill collaboration? Talking to these other coaches who are watching you, what do they need to watch out for that could kill collaboration for them? Well,
if you don't communicate, and that's you, the head coach, then you're already starting to sow the seeds of disaster.
Right.
Is communication able to talk every day or not? No. Communication is that ability to get everybody, to get your message across. Everybody knows what you're on about. And the second thing with that is that when you see something not being done properly, when you accept it, you're making a huge mistake, because you've just told someone, well, that's okay, that's acceptable. And three other people are probably watching and they think, well, that's acceptable. Right. So that destroys collaboration between you and the players, and between you and the staff. And
yeah.
So again, it's not hard, and you've got to be as a head coach, you've got to be like the old dog. You've got to walk down the middle of the road and let all the puppies do all the yelling and barking on the sidewalk. But you just keep true to what you know works, and keep communicating and take the good with the bad.
What about the problem of self-delusion, Wayne, where you can think you're doing something when actually you're not doing it, or it's not being received as you think it is?
Well, you may be in coaching long.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
A little delusional.
Okay. Steve, what would you add about that? About what can kill collaboration?
Yeah, I think Wayne mentioned earlier about some personality qualities there in terms of envy and ego. Once we start dealing with that, then I think that puts a real jealousy. Puts a real blockage on collaboration. And again, I think the beauty with Wayne is he's very open with that process, and makes it very clear that it is a very open situation, and with honesty, and I think as long as you can keep that, I think, you know, collaboration will be always there. But, you know, as soon as you start dealing with those, you know, issues on, you know, I'm too good for this, or, you know, I think that's when you start, you know, running into trouble.
One final question. Sorry.
When I was in the police force I had in my office, I needed it every day of the week, isn't it amazing how much can be accomplished when no one cares who gets the credit? And if you're in an organisation, which we were this year, where I think everyone did a wonderful job here on staff, but no one was worried about getting the credit. No one took the credit, everybody accepted it was a team effort. And I mean, I'm the head coach and I know I'm at the front of it all, but bottom line was these guys were magnificent what they all did. All the staff, the players, and we all were part of something very special. And that's, when you can have that in your organisation, it's not about who gets the credit, it's about getting the job done. Then you don't have to worry about the collaboration part of it.
So what's the difference, like if I'm playing in your first team or your second team, am I treated the same or different, or?
Absolutely, you're treated the same. Get the same training, get the same abuse, get the same love, get the same care. All the staff are committed to that. Yeah, and that's a good point, and it's a huge issue in an organisation. So if you're the office girl at the front, you know, and she's taking all the, you know, and when you have a bad weekend, who gets the most criticism on Monday mornings? That girl in the office.
Yep. You
know, and they don't let them put them through to me. You know, so you know, she's important to this organisation as I am. We just got a different role to play.
Okay, one last question. One of the central themes of the convention is what's called the New Zealand way. Now, Steve, you're in New Zealand. Do you think that's a myth, or do you think there is something different about Kiwis and the way they do things? Is it worth spending time to try and find a New Zealand way, or a set of New Zealand ways, or what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think you know, my role is the New Zealand coach for the Kiwi team. I certainly think there is a difference in terms of, you know, a different way of coaching. I don't think, you know, that's the difference is there, but I certainly you know, with the group that I do communicate with them a little bit differently, you know, to what I would here at the Brisbane Broncos, and so I do, for myself, I do think there is a way in terms of coaching, you know, especially the national team. In terms of my expectation and you know, the process, you know, it'll be very similar to what they experience at an NRL level, but you know, the way I communicate that message, you know, can be a little bit different.
Wayne, what difference did you notice?
It's a myth and it's a fact. Okay.
Tell us.
Well, the myth part is that if you think that, you know, because I'm a Newcastle guy, I'm a Broncos guy, you know, that that's our way of doing things, well, it won't be long before you're out of the competition. Righto, because you'll be living in the past. Game changes that rapidly and that quickly. So you have to accept. But if you're a long-term coach in an organisation, and there's been, like, if you take the All Blacks, for example, where they've had a lot of stability in their last 7 or 8 years of coaching, righto, and New Zealand rugby league teams had a lot of stability with Steve there. So there would be some parts of that would be distinctly what their culture is right now, and distinctly what they do. And that can be important. But on the other hand, if they're not, and you know, watch the All Blacks, they're certainly at the top of the game in lots of ways. Okay, they play a different style of football than everybody else. It's more effective than everybody else's. Steve's got his team, and they play a different style of football to the Australians as well. So the point is, you know, there's a part of it that is fact, but there's a part of it that's myth. I've just left a club, you know, they were still trying to do it the Newcastle way. Well, they were living in the past. Okay, it didn't work. Right? It's getting that balance right. But it is based on longevity of players and coaches in the one organisation, and it's also based on the fact that the smart ones are also looking how they can maintain that number one position. And then after that, you can say, well, there's a few things we do that are a bit different to everybody else, but it's not something that's set in concrete, because if it is, then it'll go past you in 4 or 5 years' time, and you'll be behind the game, and you'll be wondering, you'll have tears in your eyes thinking, where did I go wrong?
Yeah. When you worked with the New Zealand team as opposed to working with Australian teams, did you notice a difference, or were they the same?
Well, I was lucky I coached Queensland. Queenslanders are like New Zealanders, and New Zealanders are like Queensland. We all think we're underdog, we all think everyone hates us. No one gives us a go. I love that psyche. And so working with the Kiwis was because they feel that about Australia.
Yep.
And I can relate to that. and so it was just it was just a case of taking the maroon jersey and putting a black one on, and it was business as usual. And communicated with them exactly the same, because they got it. They thought Australia were full of themselves.
Yeah. That's a nice note to finish on. Thanks for your time.
Cheers, thanks, John. Thank you very much for that. It was a wonderful introduction. As you could see by the video there, the big fella, Wayne, he can be quite funny at times. I just wanted to touch on the last part of our discussion there with the Kiwi way, and I think, I think the Newcastle experience for Wayne hurt him a bit. It was a bit traumatic in the sense that I certainly believe there is a Kiwi way, and if I start off with the point that Wayne made, I know consistency. I've been very fortunate enough to be in the Kiwi role now for about 9 years. So that's given me an opportunity to develop the Kiwi way. What is it the same now as it was those 8 or 9 years ago? Definitely not. But the core, what I'll say is the core part of we're all coaches here. The core elements, the coaching elements, of my process are pretty much the same. And I reckon, they'd be very similar to Steve's Hanson's elements that he has. It'll be very similar to the Black Caps, our All Whites, our netball team. The coaching elements would be very similar in terms of, the values that we have for the group, what we want our group to be, how we want our group to look, execution, how we get our jobs done. That would be all very similar to, to each team. The Kiwi way for me is the layers that we put on top of that. And if I use New Zealanders as an example, for me, I think we're people of our land. It means a great deal to us. I think we're people of our people, so families, and I know the Australians and the English, they're important to them too. But I think it's, there is a unique quality that we do have with that, and certainly our culture. I think, that's unique, to us as Kiwis. So for me, what I do with the Kiwi team is, I make sure that, that's a significant element of, of our process. Is recognising, if I look at the example of the last team that I just taken away to the UK, 90% of the team, so I took 23 players, 21 of them live in Australia. And no doubt, those 21 players, they would have went over there when they were teenagers. 13, 14, 15, 16, some of them maybe a bit later. So for me, if I think, we are a people of, the land, our people and our culture, I want to make sure that I connect that team, with that element. And, so at the start of each campaign, we have a, cultural advisor, Ora Kihi, who works with the Waikato Chiefs. He pays some real significance, to that at the start of, the campaign. And I just think that's, for me, that's really important. As I said, and that's what makes it the Kiwi way. When I took over the job in 2008, there was, every Tuesday night, regardless of where we are, we could be in Brisbane, Auckland, the north of England. On Tuesday night, we have a family dinner. So in England, it's a bit hard in terms of the numbers, but certainly when we're in Auckland, we get 120 people there. It's supposed to be immediate family only. I'm sure second cousin George is there, and a lot of second uncles too. So, but again, the feeling, because our boys don't get an opportunity to to get back home, if they're playing with Australian clubs, they only get back and play potentially one game during the year against the Warriors. So it connects them with their family. And what I'm saying, you know, that core element of coaching, that's a layer that I put on top to make it the Kiwi way. So that, you know, that's one part of it. You know, there was also, if I take us back to the Anzac Day test this year, you know, the haka that the boys now do, it encompasses all of the cultures that we have in our group. We've got Samoan, Tongan, Cook Island, Pākehā, Māori. We've got Shawnee Johnson, who's Laos heritage, which the boys have a good old laugh about. So he's got Asian background. So, you know, we make sure the haka that they do now encompasses all of those heritages. So it's really, you know, for me, that's the Kiwi way. And that process started, if I take us back to 2012, we had an Anzac Day test here against Australia. It was against Australia, and we got an external resource to come in and observe our behaviour, the way we worked during the week, trained, had meetings, worked with the leadership group, and then obviously performed at the end of the week. So the idea was to get this external resource. They had done a lot of work with the Geelong Cats over the last decade, which, you know, were a very, very successful AFL team. And so we wanted them to come and observe, you know, how we operated. And it was very interesting in the sense that one of the observations was that she had never encountered the tightness or the closeness, the family type bond that the players had within the group. She'd worked with, like I said, the Geelong Cats. She'd done a lot of work with sports teams, and her company had done a lot of work with sports teams, and never encountered, you know, the bond that they had. My challenge, and it's always been the challenge, is I wanted that tightness, but I wanted them to deliver on performance too. And it wasn't consistent enough, you know, from my point of view, just to have, it was like a club med, you know, we were, having a good time, and, you know, we loved each other and blah, you know, and so on and so forth, but I wanted the cake at the end of the week too, you know, I wanted the performance. So the process over the course of, the process over the course of the next 4 years to get to the position where we are now was a part of that. And one of the exercises that she did, she sat down with, you know, the leaders of the group. So these are guys who, you know, at club level, you know, the top of their tree at club level. So they're the senior leadership group in the team, and she sat down with them, and there were 6 of them, and only one of them was comfortable talking about winning. And so, you know, I've got the national team, and, you know, 5 of my leaders were uncomfortable talking about winning. And, you know, part of that was, you know, because we are a people, you know, a humble, I guess we have a humble type personality. You know, a lot of them, apart from Simon and Kieran, Pacific Islanders, Māori and Pacific Islanders, so they're even more would take a step back. So the challenge over the next 4 years was about, you know, understanding that to be comfortable about talking about winning and what winning is, you know, and what winning behaviour is. So that's been as I said, you know, this process to where we are right now started back in 2012, identifying, you know, where we needed to go. Initially, it was in preparation for the 2013 World Cup. So what we worked on in 2012, and, you know, again, the values, and we had values and behaviours and actions that we wanted to live by. And ironically, back then, we called it the Kiwi way. How, you know, the way the Kiwis wanted to be seen, the way they wanted to play, the behaviour that we wanted to live by. And we called it the Kiwi way. And the process over the course of the, you know, 4 years, we sort of changed that a little bit. We had the Kiwi way, but also had Te Iwi Kiwi, which is all Kiwis. As I touched on before, it was encompassing, you know, every culture within the group: Samoan, Tongan, Cook Island, Laos, the whole lot. And so we got ourselves into a position where obviously we went away to the World Cup, and I got no doubt in terms of talent, it was probably the best team that we're ever going to put together. But the learning for myself was it's not always about the talent. You know, it's not always about the talent, and you know, it was a harsh lesson to learn. I'm not too sure if many of you saw it, but it was hard to watch. But again, in terms of the quality of talent that we had that night in the final against Australia was as good as we've ever had. But in terms of, I guess, what went on before, and it's pretty well documented, so I won't repeat myself, but what went on before the final, we weren't living our values. We weren't living our actions, and we certainly weren't living, you know, through our behaviours. So ultimately, that was our downfall. You know, the lesson for me that I took out of that was certainly it's not always about talent. It's not always about talent, and you need talent. There's no doubt about that. But what I've seen after that 2013, what I learned after 2013, I had to have a real good look at myself and how we operated, how we did things, and then be in a position where I had to make some real tough decisions moving forward. So over the course of the next couple of years, I was going to make decisions for the football team that were in the best interests of the team. They weren't always going to be popular, and it wasn't always going to be about talent, but for me it was about having players that were in the group that had created an energy which was best for everyone. And the point that we touched on there with Wayne, ego was a big one. You know, when you get an individual, and if I look at the tournament that we've just been involved in, we had 8 players, that were unavailable due to injury, so we took away a fairly young squad. And for a lot of the younger players that come in, if we didn't have a philosophy or within the group that everyone is the same, whether you played 35 test matches or whether you're about to make your debut this week, everyone is the same. As soon as we start putting guys ahead of each other, and it's the point that Wayne made there, my role is as important as the kit man's role. So Isaac Luke has played 36 test matches now. His role is as important as Cody Nikarima, who is making his debut. So straight away, what that did to Cody, it pulled the best out of Cody. Pulls the best out of the young players, because they're not seen as, okay, well, I'm going to push you back there, you stay there. And as I said earlier, we have a tendency, if you push us back there, we'll tend to hide behind the curtains anyway. So the quicker we can, pull them forward to us and make them a part of our group, the more productivity we're going to get out of them. And I think that's been a real strength of ours over the course of the last 2 years especially. We've got ourselves where we are the number one playing nation in rugby league in the world now, and for the first time ever. And like I said, part of that process is certainly been understanding that it's not always about talent. It's about picking, and it's about selecting guys who I think are going to contribute from an energy point of view. What's best, what's best. And when I say energy, I'm not talking, jumping around like a, jumping bean, Mexican jumping bean. I mean about, the positive, vibe that they bring to the group. So for me, that's been a real, part of that process, as I spoke about earlier, back in 2012. Getting an external resource to come in and observe what we do has been a part of the development of the team now. The way that I coach, it's definitely different to the way that I started off. I was very fortunate enough to spend 5 years with Craig Bellamy, and we had a pretty successful program down there, and it still is a very, very successful program. It's very intense. Bellyache, I don't know if you watch NRL, but you see him in the box. They're winning by 30 points, and he's going nuts in the box, spitting all over the front of the screen. But that's what works for Craig. But what I'm saying is their program is very intense, very detailed. So I learnt my started my craft through Craig. So when I took over the New Zealand team in 2008, I'd been with Craig for 2 years. I thought that was the way, the Kiwi way. But it wasn't the way. That was Craig's way. And so over the course of the period that I've had the Kiwi team, I guess I've developed a way which I think is best for our group. And I think that's what works for us. Will it need changing over the course of the next couple of years? I think it will. Now that Australia have we've beaten Australia the last 3 times we've played them. They've made a change to their coach. They want to win the next World Cup. We want to win the next World Cup. They've put all resource into having a full-time coach now. So we have to take ourselves to another level. And I guess that's the challenge of the coaching process is to keep looking forward to adding another layer on top of what we're about. Another example of the Kiwi way, and it's just a little thing. So the haka that the boys do now, te iwi kiwi we call it. That's their own haka. There's little adjustments for that every time. So part of the cultural process, that I spoke about earlier, ora kihi will come in at the start of the week, and the Anzac Day test this year. We made significance to the soldiers that passed before us. So at the start of the haka, the boys, when they go through the start of the haka, to recognise that. No one probably would have noticed, but they look behind them to begin with to recognise and pay respects to the soldiers that had fallen in the past behind us. So, and I think what that gives the boys, it gives a real significance about one, the haka that they're doing. 2, it recognises the past and what we've done, what people have done for us in the past, and it just reroutes the boys back to who we are, what we're about, the purpose of why we're here, and that's certainly a part of the Kiwi way. So my point is that I think there is a Kiwi way, and I think Wayne was half getting there towards the back end of his talk, but I thought. The Newcastle experience must have hurt him. Because, there's a way Barcelona play. There's a way that, Bayern Munich, they play. There is definitely a way, and I think the coaching elements, the core elements, the hard elements of coaching, they're very similar. I just think it's the layers that, you put on top that make it special to you. So that's for me, and I think that's really important. I think that's what endeared. I think that's what drew Wayne into wanting to help us out. As he said before, Queensland, they're always looked at as the underdog. So that's a bit our way. And our best performances, I got to say, not only from a rugby league sense, but I think across all sports, apart from the ABs, because they're at the top of the tree. But our best performances are when we're got our backs against the wall, and when we are definitely the underdogs, and I think that brings out the best in us, and that's the Kiwi way. The one I just wanted to go off, I just wanted to finish that part there, and I just wanted to go off track and give you a bit of an insight into what I've seen over the course of the last couple of years, just about coaching, and we all coaches here. What I've really noticed, and as I said, I've been part of pretty good programs. The Melbourne program, also now at the Broncos. I think as coaches, and I notice it through the players, I think as coaches, you know, we do spend a lot of time on process, on technique, on structure, and I know this, you know, from a rugby league sense, and I've found we lose a bit of touch with instinct, and we lose a bit of touch with feeling, in the sense of, if I give you an example, so I mentioned it to someone earlier. If I give you an example from our sense, I went back to I was at the Broncos just, midway through the year, and we were playing a game where it was 6 attackers against 4 defenders, okay? So you had 4 tackles, you had to try and score a try, make your way up the field, try and score a try. It was in a restricted area, but there were 6 attackers against 4 defenders, so there was always an advantage to the attack. So they had 4 tackles, 2 guys once they finished the 4 tackles, you had 2 guys in bibs, so they'll jump over to the attack, or to the defenders they had just defended, and they become the attackers. Does everyone understand? Yep. So I get a forward there. He's got 1 defender in front of him. He's got 2 attackers outside him, but he doesn't see it. This is tackle 1. Tackle 2, the same thing. You know, he's got an overlap. He's got more attackers than defenders. Tackle 3 is the same. So my point is, I'm sitting there scratching my head going, why does he do it? You know, but we coach them to cart the ball up, get a quick play of the ball, completion. You know, complete. And you know, my point with that is, I think, you know, with the coaching that we do, and I'm not too sure what it's a byproduct of, maybe it's a byproduct of, you know, there's Wayne, there's myself, Kevy Walters, we've got an NYC coach, we've got an elite program development coach, 2 of them, there's 7 of us, 6 of us, and we spend all day at work, so we've got to find things to do. But I think, you know, an element where I think we overlook, and I know, you know, Kiwis I think it's a big part of us. We forget about the touch and the feel and the instinct. And trust me, I know that we need structure and we need process. It's very important. We don't want to, you know, bloody circus out there. But I think we coach. Sometimes we coach the other part out of them. And that was such a clear example where I had a 6 on a 4, first 3 tackles, no one's looking at nothing, you know, it's quick play of the ball, hit it up, bang, 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 and then they try and do something on the last tackle, you know, it was no good then. So that's just for me, that's just something that I think an example. You know, if you ask a player when he's had his best performance, he's not going to tell you about the technique or the structure, or there may be an element of the process in there, but he'll tell you how he felt. You know, he'll tell you, well, you know, I seen space there, and I just ran, and then he come into me, and I passed it. He won't tell you about the numbers and you know who he was getting to, and I just think maybe we could spend a little bit more time encouraging that part of the process as opposed to coaching them out of it and getting them into this is my job, this is all I'm allowed to do, hit the ball up, play the ball quick, nothing else. I say that because that's a little part of the element that I've tried to that I have introduced into the New Zealand team, in the sense that I understand that structure and technique, process, that's all really important. But I think if we give our athletes an opportunity to, play off instinct, play off the way they feel and how they're feeling, I think we, might be able to squeeze a little bit more out of them. So thanks very much for listening. I hope it's been of some insight for you today, and I've really enjoyed being here, and much appreciated. Thank you.